you're an executive that's had a wide array of careers. You've been in lots of different portfolios.
Yes, they kept moving me around, Deidre. Move him on because he's not doing that well here.
It's quite a run, isn't it? Like of different portfolios.
Yes, I've really been the epitome of a mobile executive in government. I started as an executive in the SES in education, and I went back there twice. So I was in there twice.
A repeating theme that
we'll get to. Disability services. I worked in disability services. I worked in premiers in health 4 times, and child safety, where Deidre we worked together.
We did work together.
And there's a few
which we'll also get to.
We'll also get to. Okay.
There's some stories.
Okay. There's some there. And I think the thing I found about that was some of those portfolios I had a background in education and health because of being as a teacher and working as a psychologist. But some of those portfolios I had no background in disability services. I had no background in child safety, where your background is really solid and sound. I had no background in infrastructure and planning. And I think what it taught me was that when you move around, you have to rely on your core bag of skills and capabilities. And to succeed, you actually have to truly listen to people. And in order to understand and then be respected in a portfolio, and then not only just that, but to then advance a portfolio or challenge the thinking in a portfolio, you have to be respected. So I very much learnt that you have a little honeymoon period, and my view in moving into jobs is that honeymoon period is about 2 or 3 weeks. People will allow you that period of time to say, I'm new. Like we all know people who 6 months later in a job are saying, I'm new here. And you think, well, when are you not going to be new? And so my view is after 2 or 3 weeks, people expect you to contribute and that they'll give you that grace period. And the other thing I learned, there's like Stephen Covey he wrote the 7 habits of highly successful, highly effective people. One of the things in there he said is one of his 7 habits is seek first to understand. And what I learnt was during that 2 or 3 weeks, you can ask questions. People will accept that you're learning and in a new portfolio. At the end of that time, people are less tolerant. But it's how you got to change the way you ask the questions. So rather than saying, well, how does that work? You can say, well, can we think about it like this? And so you're making a contribution, but you're still being respectful that you're in the portfolio. And I think that reflects, I think, something in terms of where I got to talk to ministers, and there's ministers here tonight, because advising ministers is a major part of what we do. And people talk about frank and fearless advice, and I'm a complete supporter of frank and fearless. But I've also met a lot of people that say frank and fearless, and they think and they act belligerent and combative. And so it's like, well, that's my advice, and and I very much believe that is not what frank and fearless is about. Frank and fearless is about being expert. You are the expert. Being clear, being constructive and responsive, because your advice is about how you deal with a situation, and to deal with that, you need to understand what other people's perspectives are, what the minister's perspectives are, what the government's perspectives are, and your advice has to be presented in a way that is going to be heard. So I often think to myself, am I saying this because I want to say it, or am I saying this because I think it's important that the person hears it to be able to make a decision and it's going to be meaningful to them? If it's the former, I try not to say it. If it's the latter, I say it, because actually you want your advice to be heard. And to do that, you've got to understand how they're going to see it.
Yeah.